Welcome everyone to our November Lunch and Learn. We're excited to have you here. Our topic this month is legislative advocacy. And again, our Lunch and Learns for the Peer and Family Career Academy are sponsored by Arizona Complete Health. So shout out to that health plan down south for providing this opportunity for us to offer this amazing opportunity to the community. Our topic is legislative advocacy. We are excited to have an amazing speaker with you today. We will have a raffle for a $20 gift card at the end. So please stay with us until the end so that way you can know if you were the winner of that. The Arizona Peer and Family Career Academy, we exist to support our peer and family career workforce. Our intention is to provide continuing education and support to our workforce with exciting trainings, including opioid use and forensics, self-care, course, and some different courses for both peers and family support specialists. Additionally, we have an amazing program called the Peer-to-Peer program, and that is an opportunity for our peer and family support specialists to get one-to-one or group coaching. And so that really looks like it's peer support for our peer and family support workforce. So it's an opportunity for us to come together and engage in our group setting. We have a structured dialogue with questions for us to connect with other people that are working on our system and be able to engage with one another and share our experiences and what's going on in our life. And one-to-one, you can talk about what's happening in your life and really focus on your overall wellness. As we know, our workforce can be incredibly stressful. So we're so grateful that you are here with us today. I am very honored to introduce Laurie Vaudir. She is the president of our Northern Arizona Peer and Family Coalition. We have very similar names, not to be confused with one another, separate organizations, but truly amazing work that she does up there. They have strong advocacy, and she is a firehouse of an advocate up north. So welcome to everyone for coming today, and I'm going to hand it over to Laurie. I'm pulling up your PowerPoint now. Thank you.
Thank you, Haley, and I'm so excited for the Career Academy and everything that you're doing. I took one of your courses early on, several years back. It was the forensic course, at which point in time I had been working for a peer and family coalition, or peer and family organization. Sorry. Now I'm with the coalition, and also, as Haley mentioned, I chair the Northern Arizona Peer and Family Coalition, but I'm the administrative coordinator for the Arizona Peer and Family Coalition and a member of the OIFA Advisory Council, and I'm on the NAMI Arizona board. So I'm, after working 24 years in the community behavioral health system, now I'm doing just more dedication to advocacy and not working for a specific organization. One of the things that that I've helped develop is this civic leadership development training. We have 2 4-hour courses. This is kind of a leader to let you know if you have more interest in diving deeper into some of the things that we cover here, that there are 2 other courses available and they are free. So we'll go to the next slide, please. And thank you, Haley, for managing this technical part of it. We'll look first at the learning objectives, and with only an hour, there's a lot of material, so I'm going to go kind of quickly. And if you have a question, please do ask. I can see you in chat if you have a question, but our learning objectives are really how to advocate for behavioral health rights and services within the Arizona behavioral health system of care. Gain an understanding of what civic leadership is and how to advocate in person and virtually. Learning about resources and opportunities to become an advocate at local and state levels, and some skills to do so. And also learning about principles of care individual rights and how our Arizona State Legislature works. So already got a question, how can you register for the classes? You can register with Christina Sabetta, and I will get that information to you, or Haley will, after we present here. I can get it in the chat. Unless, Haley, you're able to do that.
Yep. I will post it in the chat for you, Laurie.
Okay, and that would be Christina's email. I think that's where they register, because she is the lead on that. So what are the facts? You may be familiar with some of this, but 50% of mental health conditions begin in childhood. 50% of affected youth become adults who struggle with behavioral health issues, and 50% of all sick days and 50% of all disability benefits in wealthy countries are caused by mental health conditions. 50% of all the U.S. prisoners have one or more diagnosable mental illnesses when they are sent to prison, and 50% of people with a mental illness that are 14 and older drop out of high school. So that demonstrates the real need for services. We like to catch things on the preventive end at the beginning. And for a lot of things, we need funding, and that's why it's important to understand what's behind that. So next slide. Haley will catch us up to the next slide here. Thank you. And, you know, so those were worth advocating for, recovery and resilience. And I think it's important to have a basic understanding of what recovery and resilience are. If you want to go back one slide now, didn't quite finish that one. So looking at recovery, being the process of change through which individuals improve their health and wellness, live a self-directed life. Can't overemphasize that, self-directed, and striving to achieve full potential. And then looking at resilience being the ability to adapt to life tasks in the face of social disadvantage or highly adverse conditions, including mental illness and substance use. Next slide. Next slide looks at integrated care in Arizona specifically. An integrated system is where we join the physical and behavioral health services together to treat all aspects of an individual. You know, we look at the whole person. Well, you're jumping. I was going to go quick, but I didn't quite get through that other slide yet.
I'm sorry, Laurie.
That's okay. That's okay. With the integrated care, in Arizona, we have access, the Arizona Healthcare Containment System, and they're contracted with the health plans and coordinating between physical and behavioral health providers within the same network is contractually required, which means better health and outcomes for members. Some of the health homes or clinics now have what we call a one-stop shop, where you can actually have your primary care services provided as well as your behavioral health. So now we'll go to the next slide. Just to give you an overview of what's statewide, we have regions for the healthcare contractors, and you've got the central, the south, and the north. And these have REBA, which means Regional Behavioral Health Authority contracts. And there are, if you go to the Access website, you can get some of this information to find out who the Office of Individual Family Affairs leads are in the different areas. And that brings us to the next slide, which names those individuals through Access, all individually, and an email and a phone contact for them. So you can see this is statewide, and a good tool to have. So that's a little kind of overview of state things, we'll go into now the adult guiding principles. Let me just ask, are any of you familiar with adult guiding principles? Or is that a new idea for you, a new document? Okay. So Allie's heard of it. Some of you have. All right. Looks like, let me move this over here. Okay, good. So it's new for some of you and not for some of you. All right then. So the adult guiding principles are respect, and that persons in recovery choose services and are included in program decisions and program development efforts. Focus on individuals as a whole person while including and or developing natural supports. Empower individuals taking steps towards independence and allowing risk-taking without fear of failure. Integration, collaboration in the community of your choice. Next slide. Continues with the rest of the adult guiding principles. Partnership in between individuals, staff, and family members. Natural supports for shared decision-making with a foundation of trust. Persons in recovery defining their own success. Strength-based, flexible, responsive services reflective of an individual's cultural preferences. And the fact that hope is the foundation for the journey towards recovery. Now, it's important to understand that these principles do exist. You can find these on the Access website too, I believe, because if your rights are being violated, if something's not happening, then we need to advocate. And knowing where the rights are and what they are gives us a good foundation, a good leg to stand on. So next slide, please. The children's system of care also has principles, and this is some similarity and some differences. Collaboration with the child and family, functional outcomes, collaboration with others, accessible services. That's been a difficult one for a lot of people because a lot of parents work, and having a team meeting needs to be maybe after clinic hours to accommodate that parent. Looking at best practices, the most appropriate settings, where are these meetings held? And we can go to the next slide. But actually, I wanted to say something about the functional outcomes. You can keep it on this slide, but the previous one had functional outcomes. Those are things like achieving success in school, being able to live with their families, avoiding delinquency, and becoming stable and productive adults. So we also have timeliness and services tailored to the child and the family, stability, respect for the child and family's unique cultural heritage. A lot of people want to be served by someone of the same color, and that isn't available in too many situations because of the workforce having disparity. Another factor here under the system of care principles is independence and connection to natural supports. Next slide. So, knowing your healthcare rights, it's really important to have voice. You are your best advocate to speak up to ensure that you receive the services that you need. You're a valid part of the service delivery team and an equal partner in the planning and delivery of services. Choice is crucial. You have the right to request covered services and choose where to receive them within the network. Now, if there's a service that someone needs and it's medically necessary, but it's not offered in the network or by the provider, such as we're seeing with some people who have a serious mental illness and are on the autism spectrum, the provider may may need to go outside of the network, and it wouldn't cost the service recipient, it would cost them. So they don't like to do that, but it is within the rights of choice. So also we have being involved. You have the right to be actively involved in the service planning process. And we've seen in so many situations, individuals seem to have a care manager who has their own agenda for that person. And if the person's not being listened to, not being heard, then we have a problem. It's up to the main driving force of a treatment plan is the person for whom that plan is, not the provider who is writing that plan. And if you want to see all of the OIFA one-pagers, all of the rights listed by access, go to their website, and that's shown at the bottom of this slide. And I didn't send it to Haley in advance, but I do have a little cheat sheet with just the resources listed to refer you to that I can send her and she can send out to you afterwards. Next slide. You may know that there are gaps in the system, and we're not here to berate or go after anybody, but if there is something that is needed, we want to advocate for it and be part of the solution. In housing, right now, thank you, Haley, for putting that in the chat. In housing, we have a real significant issue. In the state of Arizona, we have a wait list of between 2,800 and 3,000 adults with serious mental illness on the list for low-income housing. They're couch surfing, they're living in cars, they're using shelters, and so that's a huge issue. Currently, we've got, they're looking at, well, there's a lot going on, I'll just say for time's sake, but these are things that we are currently advocating for. Meeting needs, and I just mentioned this a minute ago, of people living with both autism and SMI, the racial disparity among healthcare providers, systemic racism, and healthcare disparities in integrated healthcare, particularly in accessing healthcare services for Native American, African American, Hispanic, and Pacific Islander, Asian communities. I think COVID really brought that to sight when we saw who was really, what the sad numbers are for who's in the hospital, who's dying, who's getting the illness. Some good things have come through advocating, such as mobile services going into communities. So another area where we have a gap is in funding. Community behavioral health providers continue to have to do more with less, and now that's compounded by workforce shortages. I'm hearing of people that can't get a counseling appointment at their community behavioral health clinic because they don't have enough therapists. And if you're lucky to get the therapist, you may be looking at once a month or every couple of weeks, where your need may be greater than that. So funding's a big one, and that's where we learn about our legislator and advocate for funding for services, funding for houses and programs. Another area in housing that we're missing is a transitional housing. When kids age out of the system for children into the adult at age 18, there's a whole missing link for transitional housing, and also for discharge upon inpatient. If I'm in the psychiatric hospital and I can't go back to where I was living for whatever reason, or I need a higher level of care before I go back to that level of independence, there's a gap there. And looking at the disparities in healthcare, you may be aware of this already, but people who live with a serious mental illness in the state of Arizona die 25 to 35 years earlier than people that do not have serious mental illness. Now, there's a couple of different factors behind that, but the bottom line is that's a sad statistic. Nationwide, that age is 25. Arizona, it's 35 years. Next slide, please. So, looking at civic leadership, you know, to be a civic leader, what are the attributes? Well, we look at access, voice, and ownership. And it has to occur in that order. So it starts at the individual level, but you can take it to a system and national level. And we'll go into each of these, starting with the next slide, please, Haley. So looking at access, you know, individuals have access to decision-making process. They have a seat at the table when the real work of planning takes place. And this is not just being at the table, but having a voice, which we'll get into. Examples of this might be a system of care gives parents 2 weeks notice for an upcoming meeting, schedule the meeting outside of 9 to 5. So that would be access, giving people access. And now we'll come to voice. The next slide, please. Thank you. For voice, I love this picture. I mean, what's not to like about this picture? So individuals having an opportunity to present their perspectives and be heard during the planning process have an active voice. So it's not just the seat at the table, but being heard, being included on the agenda, and selecting topics to be discussed and making choices about the structure and membership of the meeting. So next slide will take us into ownership, and I'm going to see if my dog's going to be quiet. Let me go see if I can silence my dog while you. Oh, no, you have to be quiet. I'll see if I can have her be quiet. Otherwise, I'm going to have to put her outside. So ownership is where individuals feel a thorough sense of commitment to the plan of care and identify with it and believe it to be worthwhile. So ownership is, you know, it's really important. And I see you've moved right on to the shared feelings. Yeah, no, we're good with going to the next one. Shared feelings, where all parties feel vulnerable. No one wants to feel powerless or manipulated. Everyone wants to be valued, respected, and competent. All parties wish for positive outcomes for family, youth, and peers. Next slide. So with the next slide, looking at civic leadership and aspects to consider, you know, one size doesn't fit all, and you're best going where your passion is. So things to consider are, who am I in this work? And am I a formal or a natural leader? How will I use power to move the system forward? And what are my values and attitudes? And identifying and acknowledging the isms in myself, and regulating distress, addressing the isms, and giving work back to the people. Next slide. So more attributes here: teamwork, personal identity, perspective, and views of the system. When you look at leadership attributes, you're looking at the inner or personal qualities that constitute effective leadership. These would be like values, traits, behaviors, and skills. Examples might be being supportive, charismatic, inspiring, encouraging, cooperative, helpful, collaborative, persistent, and responsible. Next slide. So it's about the whole. I don't know why these slides are showing with the top of the next one, but anyway, it's about the whole. When you're on a committee, it's not about you, it's about the whole. You're part of something larger than yourself. And being respectful is a key for the unity. When you're placed on or join a board or a committee or a work group, you're there representing other people like you. And information sharing is the key to the successful participation. Oh, that's good. Now that you've got that centered, let's go to the next slide. I love this. This is one of my favorite ones in the whole deck. I'm an animal lover. So, big ears, a small mouth, and wide eyes. Why is this so important? And this is where I'll ask anybody to go ahead and share, why is it important to have big ears? Anybody want to comment on that? Exactly, to listen to others. And why a small mouth? And wide eyes. Okay, so, right, and thank you, Linda. Just like in peer work, listening for meaning. So the big ears are for listening. The small mouth is to speak, but not to overtake others in speaking. And the wide eyes are to see the big picture. And if you're curious, this is a fox that lives in the Sahara Desert. It's called the fennec fox. Next slide. So how to advocate effectively? It helps to believe in yourself. Everything starts with you. You need to put yourself first, do your work on you before you can be there for others. So believe in yourself, know your rights, decide what you want, get the facts, and then strategize. And with knowing your rights, we've got the Arizona Center for Disability Law, and then we referred earlier to the one-pagers on the Access website for your rights. And when you're strategizing, it often is useful to write down what you think will work and what steps are necessary to achieve the goals, and ask others and get feedback from them for your ideas. In advocating effectively, you want to gather support, work together with others, help each other to be mutually supportive, join groups with common concerns, target your efforts, express yourself clearly. Good communication skills are necessary for advocacy, for effective self-advocacy. Learn to say directly what you mean. Be brief and stick to the point. Don't allow yourself to ramble on with unimportant points. And I'm sure we've all been in the situation where someone has done that. And you have to kind of sift through for what is the point. So being an effective advocator, you want to come right to it clearly. And assert yourself calmly. Again, self-care is important. If someone gives you a hard time, stay cool. Don't lash out. Don't lose your temper. Instead, speak out and listen. Be firm and persistent. Don't give up. Keep after what you want and always follow through on what you say. Commit yourself to getting what you need for yourself. Next slide. So in promoting understanding, we look at things like showing respect. that's important in building relationships and increasing your knowledge, generating ideas, building loyalty. There's always new things to learn. That's how a leader grows. Building loyalty among your partners. So if you think of a leader that you respect, that's a good listener, you can think, about, well, what was it about that person, and how did they make me feel? Looking at the next slide, seek first to understand rather than to be understood. That's a quote from St. Francis. And, being able to understand people is crucial in order to serve as a leader. It's important, even if you don't have a large following, you need to understand the issues of the population you are representing. For example, if you're a leader in the children's mental health movement, then you need to understand the issues of family and youth with mental health care needs and what they face. You need to be able to see the other person's perspective, what it is like to be on the other side, coming from another person's perspective, and having personal empathy. Try to understand what people have been through, and developing a positive attitude about people, and learning about people. One of the things that we do in the Peer and Family Coalition is Arizona Dialogues, where we have a panel of people. We come together with a topic, and people have different perspectives. And we come together not to prove anyone right or wrong, but to walk away with a greater understanding of what the other person is seeing and experiencing. So in today's world, we'll go to the next slide with online meeting etiquette. I think by now a lot of you have experienced being in online. Here you are in this Zoom meeting. Let me see here. I just want to take a glance here. Oh yeah, Arizona Dialogues are still active somewhere. Thank you, Linda. I'm actually working on one up north here for choice of where to go for services. But back to the slides, online meeting etiquette, joining early, dressing appropriately, being aware of our surroundings, and I do apologize, at least my dog is quiet now, muting your microphone when you're not talking, staying seated and present, minimizing distractions, and being patient with others, and then planning for an effective wrap-up. Next slide. Speaking to policymakers or committees, we want to look at telling your story, an elevator speech, how to prepare for meetings, and stress management. The telling your story is something we go into great detail in the other trainings, in the 4-hour trainings. We break out into breakout groups and have an opportunity to spend time working on your story. Some of you may already be employed or working as a peer support, in which case you've had some training on that. Next slide, please. So just briefly, you have your introduction, what happened, what helped, how you're different today, what is the need or the problem, and what will help others, what is your ask. And again, the CLD, Civic Leadership Development, and the other class, the Civic Leader Development 2.0, provide a lot of time to develop those skills. Next slide. In preparing for meetings, what skills do you use to feel prepared, calm, and confident? Some examples might be the breathing, positive self-talk, progressive muscle relaxation. And for online meetings, know your technology. Do checking in advance to make sure things are working. Dress appropriately and comfortably. Take a break when needed. self-care is important, and I always emphasize self-care first. And you may have things that you can add to this. This is something else that we go into deeper in the other trainings and share our own experiences. Oftentimes we can learn from someone else something that we didn't know of before that may be helpful. Next slide, please. Now we're going to get into some of the nitty-gritty on this. Understanding committee use of Robert's rules. Robert's rules are used in a lot of committees. Some committees use them partially, some are very formal and follow them strictly. But if you come to a meeting and they say, well, we follow Robert's rules, this will give you at least a basic understanding of what it is. The slide presentation, we are not at this point sharing that liberally, but I'm available for questions, or if there's specific information after the training, Haley can put my email in the chat box. So understanding the committee use of Robert's rules. Who was this guy? Well, he was an Army general, and he published this in 1876. So, you know, it's a bit dated. You can find more information on that going into the next slide. So Robert's Rules, parliamentary procedure. What is parliamentary procedure? Well, it's a set of rules for conduct at meetings that allows everyone to be heard and to make decisions without confusion. And it's important because it's a time-tested method of conducting meetings, and it can be adapted to fit the needs of any organization. Today, Robert's Rules of Order has been newly revised, and it's the basic handbook of operation for most clubs, organizations, and other groups. So looking at what are the basic rules, we'll go to the next slide. And they are calling a meeting to order. There may be a roll call, a reading of minutes of the last meeting, officers' reports, committee reports, special orders, important business, previously designed for consideration at the current meeting. You can look at unfinished business, new business, announcements, and adjournment. So that's it in a nutshell. Pretty basic way to follow it. But in the next slide, we see that there are ways to vote on a motion, and they can do that. I'll wait till we get to the next slide. They can do that by voice, by roll call, general consent, by division, or by ballot. Ballot is, you know, used when they want secrecy and who's voting for what. Oh, that's not my email address. That's not an accurate one. So disregard that email address. It's Laurie Verdier #2@gmail.com. He's pulled up an old one. Poor Haley is having to multitask, but she's good for it. So I can put that in. All right, we missed, that's right. So thank you, that's the correct email, laurieverdier2@gmail.com. Robert's Rules proper use is to allow that motions are in order, to have members obtain the floor properly and speak clearly and concisely, obeying the rules. The most important thing of all is to be courteous. And I think you may be familiar with the fact that people don't always remember what you say, but they'll remember how it made them feel. So be cognizant of that. Next slide. Getting your point across. A point of order brings attention. They call it getting your attention to the infraction of rules. And it could be a point of privilege pertaining to noise, and you can interrupt only if necessary, and they'll usually say POP, point of privilege. So this request in a very formal meeting could be used to leave the room for any reason. Should someone's motion to admit all members. Next slide. Parliamentary inquiry. This is when a question is directed to the chair to obtain information of a law or other rules. It's a point of information, and a request is directed to the chair or through the chair to another person and is abbreviated as a POI. Next slide. So roll call voting, most votes are done by taking roll, and they can vote for, against, or abstain. And if they have a conflict of interest, they need to recuse themselves and abstain. Next slide. Which committee would be the right one for you? You want to research what are their values, objectives, and do they align with yours? They should allow you to attend a meeting to see if this is a comfortable fit for you. And they should allow you to review minutes and agendas. And are they moving at your speed? Do they cover issues that are important to you? These are things that you may not be able to find without experiencing it by attending the meeting before you decide to join, if it's a board or a committee. So let's look at effective onboarding to getting on that. Do they have formal training? If they do, take advantage of it. Do your homework, review their guidelines. If they have policies and procedures, if it's a board, they do have policies and procedures. You want to be familiar with what that is. Look for a mentor. Look for someone who's already there that can assist you and serve as a mentor or a coach. And then we have OIFA, Office of Individual Family Affairs. Reach out to your Regional Behavioral Health Authority Plans Administrator. Their job is to support peers and family members that sit on committees. I work with the OIFA leads throughout the state with the advocacy work that I do, and some will refer you directly to someone else in the organization, and some will work directly with you. They're all a little bit different. Next slide, please. This goes into helpful tools, and I can get an email out to you, or you can take your camera, your phone, and just take a quick picture of this. Give you a moment to do that. And then we'll move on to the next slide. We have a lot of coalitions and committees in Arizona. And I think that because you are here and because you're affiliated with the Career Academy, you know, we would welcome you. I can speak, you know, for myself with either the APFC or the NAPFC and say, come on and join. So, but there is a peer participation and recruitment list on this website, mentalhealthresources.org. That website is going to change very soon. If you have not visited that website, I suggest you visit it as soon as you can. It's been a real challenge to maintain and update it, but it's an excellent resource right now. The Northern Arizona Peer and Family Coalition. Yeah, we're on the next slide, on 43. Oh, okay, people are getting a picture of that one. Sorry. And you might want to take a picture of this one also. The Arizona Peer and Family Coalition, the Northern Arizona Peer and Family Coalition. which is an affiliate of the Arizona Peer and Family Coalition. The NAMI chapters, in most regions, there are a NAMI chapter, and the Family Involvement Center, FIC, and My Kid both work with youth and families. And then there's Mental Health America. And these are just some. And if you've got a picture of this, when you got a picture of this, we'll go to the next slide. Understanding your state legislature. This is where you get deep into the weeds. There's a whole lot going on here, and this is where the Civic Leadership Development Course 2.0. We spend 4 hours. We go into a whole lot of this deeper than what you're getting here now is just a quick oversight. But the Arizona Legislature consists of a Senate and a House of Representatives. Each legislature lasts 2 years and consists of a first regular session and a second regular session. Regular sessions begin the second Monday in January and generally last 100 days. Either the legislature or the governor may call for a special session, and in the special ones called by the governor, the legislature may only consider the matters specified by the governor. There is no such limitation for special sessions called by the legislature. I wanted to point out that when we look at our legislatures, something that occurred to me was, how much money are these people making? You know, they say it's your tax dollars. Well, it is. They earn $24,000 a year plus per diem. So $24,000 a year may not sound like a whole lot in the big picture, but when you add the per diem, they get $151 a day, and they can get $96 for lodging and $55 for meals. So if you add that $151 a day, it does add up. They're making some money. Next slide, please. So this has to do with basics in the Senate, and the Senate has an upper house of the legislature, 30 senators, one from each of Arizona's 30 districts. The term of office is 2 years. They can draft, introduce, and vote on legislation. They can enact laws and propose amendments to the state constitution to be referred to the voters. Along with the House, they approve the state's annual budget, can confirm or reject any gubernatorial appointee for the executive branch offices, and they also have powers of trial and conviction to remove elected offices if impeached by the House acting as a jury. Next slide. This is more of the same of that, but this has to do with the House of Representatives, made up of 60 representatives, 2 from each of the 30 districts. Term of office, same as the other, 2 years. They can draft, introduce, and vote on legislation. They can enact laws and propose amendments to the state constitution to be referred to the voters, and along with the Senate, they can approve the state budget. They hold the sole power for impeachment of elected officials that starts the impeachment process, but defers to the Senate for trial or conviction. Next slide. So bills are introduced by the Legislative Council, and they may also draft a bill on request. Bills are drafted in accordance with the Arizona Legislative Bill Drafting Manual, which is available on the Council's website. The Legislative Council is a joint legislative committee with members from both the House and the Senate and a professional staff. Next slide. So introducing a bill, they're introduced in the first 29 days of regular session and the first 10 days of a special session. They can be introduced by a member of the House or a member of the Senate. And when they're introduced, they're put in a box called the hopper. Then the bill is given a number. The Senate bills start at 1001. and the House bills start at 2001. And the number is retained throughout the session. Next slide. Reading a bill. Once introduced, let Haley catch up to the next slide. Once introduced, they're put on the calendar for the first of 3 required readings in 3 separate days, but that can be waived by a majority. I'm going to move ahead a little more quickly through some of this without reading everything on it. Let's go to the next slide. So the committee system, due to the volume, we're on the next slide. Due to the volume and diversity of issues before the legislature each session, bills will receive their first detailed consideration in committee. There are several types of committees, each fulfilling a different function. Then we come up to the legislative committee rules. They follow Mason's 10 principles. This is different than Robert's rules. So back to where you were on Mason, slide 51. Yeah. So this is a list of what those rules are and how that works. And you can find this online. Next slide. The next slide just completes the 10 principles of the legislative committee rules. And these are followed by legislatures across the country. Next slide is rules of the committee. So there's a rules committee, and they consider the constitutionality of proper form of bills and amendments reported from other standing committees. Next slide. On standing committees. Standing committees adopt their own rules of procedure, and during the legislative session, they can meet weekly or more often if necessary. And meetings can be open to the public and the press. Special meetings can be called by the committee chairman. Next slide, please. On subcommittees. Subcommittees are the only example where one of us could be on a committee. You have to be a legislator in the House or the Senate to be on a committee. But if they have subcommittees, they may pull someone in from outside. That does not happen very often. Next slide. This comes to kind of the heart of the matter, the request to speak on a committee. Although we can't be on a committee, we can request to speak at a committee. You have to register to do this. So let's go to the next slide. How to create an RTS, request to speak account. There's an actual kiosk. They have one in Tucson and they have one in Phoenix where you would need to go to fill out a form to create your account. However, if you go to the next slide, and I suggest you take a picture of this next slide. Again, this is stuff we go into 4 hours. We have more time in detail. But on the next slide, you can go to the link here shown for the Civic Engagement Group. They will sign you up. You don't have to go to the kiosk in Phoenix or Tucson. They'll sign you up. And if you go to their site and then you click on the banner that you see on the bottom of this slide, they'll walk you through an actual video instruction of how to do this. And that's just really, to me, this is complicated stuff, and they simplify it. So going to their website, they can't sign you up all the way. They turn you over at a certain point because you give personal information, maybe your driver's license or something, are you to demonstrate that you are a registered voter or what. There are a couple of things. But this is really an important piece to have your voice heard. Next slide, please. Once you are registered to speak, you can do it remotely. They will register and track what you've said, so you might want to keep track of that yourself. See here. You have to make your request in advance. And there's more links here on the request to speak to get yourself on the agenda or see the agendas. Next slide, because I know we're coming in, we're closing in on it here. So for answers frequently asked regarding the legislature, it's real important to determine your district and your legislator. So here's a link that you can go to for that. You might want to take a quick picture of this one too. You need to know, you know, what your district is. It's really important to communicate with your legislators. Next slide. So some examples of topics that we, with the Arizona Peer and Family Coalition, are addressing: funding for behavioral health care, housing, children and transition age youth, transportation. There are a couple of bills. Once you get onto the legislative pages, you can track bills and see what they are, see what they look like when they were being worked on, when they were being developed through track changes. You can see the status. Was it already voted on? What was the outcome? Who introduced it? A lot of good information available. Next slide. So, you know, be involved, participate, communicate. Get to know who your representatives are and let them know you. Let them know the issues you're interested in, know what issues are being addressed, and provide input throughout the process before they're presented as a bill, when they're still in the committee stage. Follow bills of interest being drafted and provide your input. Request to speak in committee. You know, it's just important to participate, be informed, and that is empowering. So the last slide, or I think, you know, I encourage you to join a coalition or an organization of your choice. Provide your legislators with your input on bills, participate. And like Margaret Mead said, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. So that concludes this. I know I rushed through it, and that leaves us with 1 minute before noon. Any questions that you might have for me, any interest in more information, don't hesitate to email me at the Laurie Verdier #2@gmail.com. And I appreciate all of you being here. And you know, never underestimate yourself, who you are, the voice you have, the choices you have, and the good that you can do as an advocate. Any brief questions or comments? I don't know how strict you are in running over a couple minutes or not.
I am good if we want to stay. I do want to thank everyone for coming, and I do have a quick wheel to spin with for a raffle prize. So I want to get to that real quick in case anyone does need to jump for another meeting. So if you don't mind, I'm going to do that and
while you're looking at that, I want to see, Linda said she's interested in how effective this is and what deeper needs are for effectiveness. The Arizona Peer and Family Coalition has an advocacy committee. We have active participation with the legislature. And if you go to the Arizona Peer and Family Coalition, I won. How did that happen? Go to the website and you can see what our legislative priorities are and different things there.
Well, that was super fun. Laurie, you ended up winning. I put you in there because I was like, she's technically not with the Peer and Family Career Academy. So let's go for it. So congratulations.
Well, or is that a default and you need to spin the wheel again? I mean, I want to play fair.
I put it in there, so you're good to go.
Okay. What a